So it's been said that the 1911 model pistol can be disassembled entirely by the bits and pieces that are contained within the pistol. You can actually use the parts like tools. But what you may not know is that you can also do a Glock the same way I've discovered. So that's what I'm going to show you today is how to disassemble and entirely disassemble a Glock using no tools other than what you can find inside the Glock itself. So I'll show you. What you have here is my Glock 19, my current everyday carry pistol. It's just a 9mm compact, run-of-the-mill factory gun. I haven't done anything to it but scratch it up a tad. So just like anytime you're going to disassemble a gun, we're going to first make sure it's unloaded, excuse me. Drop the magazine. You've got an empty magazine. Lay that aside. We'll disassemble it later. Lock the slide open. Check the chamber both visually and manually. Once you're satisfied that it's empty, drop the slide and do basically a field strip. You're going to pull the trigger. If you hold the gun like this, it's easiest to hold just like you're going to shoot it, except rotate your hand up. Grab the slide and move it back just about 1/8 of an inch. And then you've got your slide release, your slide lock right here. You're going to pull down on that and then let the slide come forward. And then the slide will come off of the frame. Lay the frame aside, we'll disassemble it later. The slide has this spring right here, the recoil spring we're going to pull out. And then the barrel also will slide slightly forward and then pull out. So at this point we've got our barrel, our recoil spring, our assembled slide, and our assembled frame. So we'll start with the slide first. You can actually use, in order for this slide to come off, this backing plate right here has to come off. In order to do that, we've got to compress the firing spring. The firing pin. If you look under the firing pin here, there's a little black plastic sleeve that it fits inside. That sleeve is actually putting pressure on that backing plate. So in order to get the backing plate off, you've got to get that sleeve off. The way that you do it like this is to use the feed ramp, which is this part right here. It's just flat, kind of pointy. This part of the barrel right here will actually slide under. It is thin enough to go inside of here. What you'll do is you'll use this end of the feed ramp to push the firing pin, also known as a striker, back, like so. And then you use this end to catch that black plastic sleeve and compress it this direction. So you just take that and push the firing pin back and then drop it in there. Drop the feed ramp in there. And you can feel it contact that sleeve and then just push it just a tad further, like a 1/16 of an inch, not long at all. And then just use your index finger to push the backing plate off. Once you've done that, keep your index finger in place because there's some springs in there that might come out if you don't. The backing plate will just pop off. Hold on to that. And then if you look here, you've got your firing pin that slides out. That's actually can be broken down farther. We'll do that in just a second. And then you've got the other metal rod that sits right beside it, the extractor plunger that comes out, which can also be taken apart further. We'll do it in a second. In order to finish stripping this, we need to take out the extractor, which is this metal piece here. In order to do that, we just depress this this little silver plunger. So once you push that, the extractor comes out of the side. That plunger comes out of the bottom. So now the plunger has a little bit of spring on it, a little tiny spring. Just grab that spring and pull it off. And that's got that taken care of. And then we'll get our firing pin. This can be a little bit tough to do, but what we're going to do is take the sleeve and we're going to put it up against a hard surface, and then we're going to grab this spring and compress it, like so. Once we do that, these little halves of a cup right here will come off and out of the spring, and then the spring will let go. The spring comes off. You can see the two little halves of this cup. They're easy to lose, so don't lose them. But those hold the spring in place. Those come off. Then you've got your spring, and then your firing pin, which is the metal piece, and then that sleeve I've been talking about comes off also. And then you've got this other little rod, which has a spring on the end. The spring will just pull off the metal rod. And then if you look in the end of the spring, there's a black plastic pin, for lack of a better term, that will come out. So we take that out. Hold on to that, because that's going to be our next tool that we use to get the first pin out of the frame. You can lay your slide aside and all the components that go inside. So you've got your little plastic pin that came out of that spring, and then you've got the rod that came out of the other end of that spring. We're going to move on to the slide. We take that rod, and you've got 3 pins that you need to take this down with. You've got one here in the back. You've got one similar diameter metal pin here, and then one larger pin right here. We're going to start with the plastic pin because it's the easiest to get out, and we don't have the correct tools to get all the pins out, so we want to do the easiest thing first. Once we take this pin out, it will actually become a tool to take out this pin, which in turn will become a tool to take out this pin. So we'll take this and just insert it right here into this little hole and push it enough to just pop that pin out just a tad. And it will just make it less abusive on our next tool, which is your black plastic pin that came out of that spring. You'll take that pin and put it in the same hole as you did the metal rod and gently push until that pin comes out enough so that you can get your teeth on it, about 1/4 inch, maybe 1/2 inch. It's important to note that pin will flatten out just a tad, but it can only go so far because after that, the pin's hollow at the end, but after that it's solid. So it'll look a little bit deformed, but trust me, I've done this 100 times. You won't tear it up. So once you've got that done, you've got this rear pin protruding from the back of the gun, just enough to get your teeth on. Just pull it out with your teeth enough to get your hand on it. So now you've got this pin out. This becomes our next tool to take out the metal pin, which is on the top right here. We're just going to lay this down on its side, take that metal pin and put it right on the edge, and then you're going to grab the slide, which is now disassembled. You're going to use a slide as a hammer, as a mallet, to knock this other pin out. Now, I've done this plenty of times. It doesn't damage the plastic pin, and it doesn't damage the finish on the Glock. Glocks are known for their Tenifer finishes. You can see up close, this is the part that you're going to use to hit, this flat part right on the very back. That side has no damage, and that side has no damage. And I've done this 100 times with this particular Glock because I enjoy it. But as you can see, it's not hurt at all. So we'll take that plastic pin and just support the frame on the table and hold the other end in your hand. And take that slide and just tap it out of there. Just a few taps, and it'll come loose. At this point, you're not going to want to drive that pin all the way in because, like I said, these two pins here and here are similar in diameter, and if you push that plastic pin all the way in, it'll stick in that hole, which would defeat the purpose of taking the pin out. So you'll drive it halfway through and then pull each pin out. Now you're finished with the plastic pin as a tool for now. You can set it aside. We'll take our metal pin and just repeat the process on this bigger pin down here. So again, just support the frame, one in on the table and one in your hand, line it up, and just give it a few good firm taps. And with this one, you actually can drive it all the way through if you need to, because the pin you're taking out is bigger than the pin you're tapping with. So there's your medium pin, and there's your big pin. So we've got all our pins out. At this point, we can finish stripping the slide. Once we've got our pins out, grab your firing pin. This is our next tool we're going to use. It works good as a lever. We're just going to reach under, support on the side of the frame here, and reach under this silver U-shaped piece, which is the slide block, and just pry it up. Just enough to take it out. And then you can just pull that out and set it aside. Next comes the slide catch. It's not being held in by anything at this point, so just grab it. It comes off of there and set it aside. Next comes the entire trigger assembly. You can just basically see a little pointy piece. You can just grab it and pull it out. And then out comes your trigger bar, and the rear trigger assembly, which is here. This breaks down further. You can just grab this trigger bar, and it basically rotates out of this hole back here. It's got a little wing on it. You can see it kind of comes out from under there. Once you rotate it out, it just pulls straight up. You've got a spring that connect the two. That spring will actually rotate back like so, and it makes it easier to take it off. You'll just pull that spring out of either end. That's got a hole in it right there that spring comes out of. And the same thing here, the spring just lifts off of there. There's also got a little hole. But once the spring comes off, this sidebar here will actually come off. This is what controls how heavy the trigger is. Mine happens to be a 3.5 pound. Glock comes from the factory with a 5 pound, and you can also buy an 8.5 pound for it. So that's mine. That just takes apart. This is you're left with a plastic piece. This is as far as it breaks down. That other metal piece doesn't come out of there. Also, this trigger bar is broken down as far as it can. You can see a couple of pins right here on the trigger. I haven't found a way to take them out, which is probably good, because if you did take them out, I'm of the opinion that you would have to send it back to the factory to get it fixed. So set that trigger bar aside for now. It's going to become a tool in just a second.